The following content is sponsored by Imperatum. DE should buff the Carrick. Welcome back to Can I Has Buff, the Warframe series that highlights older or weaker weapons, offering buffs or reworks to fit with the current game. In this episode, we will be taking a look at the Nukor pistol, which was introduced on August 28, 2014 in Update 14.5, commonly known as the Operation Chaotic Front update, which introduced the excavation game mode. The Nukor is an interesting pistol as it is one of the few Grineer weapons that use more advanced technologies, in this case being an apparent microwave radiation gun. The gun opens up when firing as if to vent off excess heat, and the pulsing rings of radiation pulse out and expand the body parts of enemies when hit, often causing funny but also glitchy enemy models. Dealing 35 radiation damage a tick, the damage is rather low, however the weapon has a hidden effect that also increases the damage by about 60% on enemies affected by the Nukor. While this sounds confusing, this basically just means 60% more damage than listed, meaning the weapon will deal around 52 damage a tick when held on an enemy. The weapon also has a very low 1% crit chance to critically hit, but a 4 times critical multiplier when it does, which normally is not worth modding for. However, firing through a mutilous Quanta Bubble, which adds additive critical chance, or using Harrow's 4th ability after taking lots of damage, will allow the weapon to crit a decent amount of the ticks, allowing crit builds to become viable if not situational. Its damage itself is actually not bad for a continuous weapon, however the issues lie with it being a continuous weapon in itself. Being a continuous weapon, it must be held on the enemy for a brief moment to reach its maximum damage per second, as well as rapidly draining ammo as you fire the weapon. Only having 210 rounds in reserve does not help this fact, making a standard build with Lethal Torrent incredibly ammo inefficient, usually too much for ammo mutation mods in higher levels to adequately replenish so much ammo usage. As with all continuous weapons, it also has a range cap, with the Nukor being 20 meters, which is sufficient for most missions, but you can end up firing and wasting ammo without hitting enemies just outside this radius. Simply put, the weapon has two major issues. It's a continuous weapon with all the unfortunate issues they have, such as multi-shot not adding status, status being per second rather than per tick, and fire rate rapidly increasing ammo consumption while not increasing damage significantly. So the weapon does fine damage but runs out of ammo too fast and has inconsistent status, so how could DE fix the Nukor? In all my buff suggestions, the ammo consumption should be lowered to 2 ammo per second at base while keeping the same damage as it is currently. My first suggestion is to allow the weapon to increase its damage over time as enemies expand, increasing the effectiveness of the Nukor's radiation damage by 100% per second for 4 seconds. After 4 seconds of firing on the same enemy, the radiation damage of the Nukor will be increased by 400% at base, since the weapon is supposed to be cooking enemies from within. Sustained fire would basically mean more and more critical damage to cellular structures of enemies, or in robotics case, more and more disruption of their sensitive electronic systems. While 400% does seem like a lot, remember that only the radiation damage from the Nukor will be boosted. My second suggestion is to allow enemies killed to explode and actually deal damage, as they currently will explode, but this is only visual. Enemies killed will explode, dealing 300 radiation damage, boosted by 40% of the enemy's max health, in a 6 meter radius, with a 100% chance to proc radiation. This way, the Nukor will be turned into an area of effect killer, spreading radiation to enemies and causing them to fight when you expand and violently blow them up with microwave radiation. The damage will remain the same, so it will still be difficult to kill enemies on higher levels, however. My third and final suggestion would be to allow the Nukor to turn enemies into walking radiation emitters. Enemies affected by the weapon will begin to emit pulses of radiation from their bodies, starting at 35% of the weapon's base damage at 2 meters, expanding to 60% of the weapon's base damage at 5 meters when enemies are fully succumbed by the weapon's expansion effects. Nearby enemies will be dealt steady radiation damage as they stay near, with a chance to proc radiation which will cause them to begin to fight each other. This would be even better when irradiating a close range or melee enemy, as the weapon will irradiate them and cause them to rush into crowds, damaging them and usually proccing them with rad procs as well. This would turn the Nukor into a damage and crowd control hybrid weapon, while still dealing the same base damage to enemies. The Nukor is more of a fun weapon, although in certain scenarios it can be boosted to become decently powerful. Even so, ammo is always an issue with this gun, and on high levels, and especially versus armor, you will find yourself using your entire 50-round clip or more to kill an enemy, or even all your ammo to do so. It has potential, and hopefully Digital Extremes will see this video and take note of my suggestions, and hopefully buff the weapon. Thanks for watching.